perfectly acceptable these days. Hi there, Dave Whitmarsh. Have another podcast here. And although I've spent a whopping 4 minutes speaking to the next guest, I read some bios and things. I'm pretty excited about it. So what we're going to get to know is Tamica Sears. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So give us a bit about what you do, and in that way, it might help some folks with some context as they listen to
Absolutely.
the rest of it.
Absolutely. So I stumbled into the kind of HR realm of work when I was 16. My first job after school, I was working as a personnel clerk. One of my sisters got me and my twin sister a job and just fell into it and just happened to love it. So I've been doing HR for a while now. Not going to date myself, but it's been a while. And I have been very fortunate that I've been able to do multiple facets of HR, from payroll and benefits to employee relations, labor relations, organizational design and development and training and leadership development. And kind of my sweet spot really is doing some leadership development work and pairing that with like some HR for HR work, which my HR for HR work includes a lot of DEI, because I do think that HR should kind of hold the leaders accountable and companies accountable when it comes to DEI. And I've just noticed that a lot of HR teams just really aren't doing that.
Yeah. Well, everybody was privileged to hear us before, but I'm in the middle of pulling together a DE&I initiative that focuses around pretty much one of the industry reports. I said that a good 67% of companies don't have the finances to do it. And I'm really passionate about the topic. And I just want to build an aggregated certification program that focuses on leveraging the industry experts out there. And I want to do it for free because
Nice.
I don't see any reason why budget should get in the way of something that just is morally right. So
Right.
and are you finding, so by the way, in your introduction there, you answered a whole bunch of the questions I normally start out with. So so that makes it easy. So what are you finding that the diversity space is, as that report said, that a lot of companies just aren't putting the right resources on those types of projects?
I think so. And one of the things I found is a lot of times you get this big announcement, right? Like, we've hired our diversity director, yay! But then in actuality, the diversity director has no goals, no backing from the top, no budget, no nothing. So you have a diversity director, but that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it is budget, but the way that I feel about it, what's important? Where do you want your money to go? Like, what do you want to spend your money on? So I don't know that it's necessarily that people don't have the money, or they just don't want to have the money.
And funny enough, yesterday I was speaking with an Iowa psychologist that does have a diverse background, and he was curious, and he looked at all the different the major players in the diversity space. And when he looked at their leadership team, 37% of them were women. And when he started looking at visible minorities,
Mhm.
we were looking at I think it was 5% African American
Yeah.
and 3% Asia Pac, or maybe it was the other way around, out of the 330 people that he saw
Mhm.
on diversity or HR providers that offer diversity as a solution. Now he kind of guessed on the Hispanic population, which is because the names can be a little tricky
Right.
to figure out, but it was pretty low too. So a
Hmm.
lot of these companies really aren't even putting the money where their mouth is, and then so they hire somebody, and as you suggest, they just don't give them the tools to do what they want.
Yes. Yes.
And so what? Okay, so and I'm sorry if I put you on the spot here. So
Go
let's
ahead.
take the let's take the visible part out, and some of the um and that, and let's just talk about what advantages do you see from having a diverse workforce? Like,
So
can you make a business case for that?
yeah, so it's one of the things for me is not just a matter of having a diverse workforce, because in order to have a diverse workforce, you have to have an inclusive workforce. So if you don't take care of inclusion first, that diversity means nothing, because you're not going to listen to them anyways. They're just going to churn. It won't matter. And there are plenty of companies that say, oh, we are going to increase our number of hiring of people of color by whatever percent. And then the people of color get there, they're treated poorly, and they leave. And so then you just end up basically giving people more workplace trauma because you didn't work on that inclusion piece first.
Mhm.
If you work on that inclusion piece first, and then you have diversity, you can stop things like happening. I mean, you've seen all over, there are things that happen and you're like, how did that, what went on? And one of the most egregious ones that I typically talk about, there was a troll doll that came out several years ago, and it was all over the news. It was all over YouTube. There were moms that were mad because the troll doll, when you turned it over, you pressed a button between its legs, it giggled. And, as a woman, I look at that and I was like, oh, there was either a woman in the room that they didn't listen to, or there was no woman in the room to say, that's stupid.
Yeah, right.
So it's, something, even like that, like this big, huge rollout that they did of a toy that they had to recall, waste millions of dollars because someone either wasn't listened to or wasn't there.
Yeah, yeah. I've been, I completely agree. And so I've been doing some work with the Clifton Strengths program that
Mhm.
Gallup has, and really some of the findings are interesting, and it's just about perspective, I think, sometimes, right? So if I was to and I've got the birth lottery, right? My family's um good and solid, and I'm a 52-year-old white male born in Canada. Like, that gives me, I'm so far ahead of so many people around
Right.
the world. It's not even funny, just by that right, or not right, by that fortune. And so, but the problem is, if I had a department that I had a whole bunch of people that thought the same way that I did, right, we're going to see things very focused,
Hmm.
and there's business opportunities or efficiencies that we're just going to miss,
Right.
right, because we don't take it. So there's good numbers and good statistics in
Hmm.
how this actually helps your business, instead of going, all right, we got to do something about it. No, you got to grow your business, and this is the
Right.
best way to do it.
Right.
Yeah. So very cool. So what else are you seeing out in the marketplace um that you can shed some light on?
So one of the things that I know that I see, I live in Arizona. It's not a very diverse state. So one of the things that I see here, um, people aren't very open to diversity training or talks about diversity. And there's definitely a feeling here that, David, you would be put upon as a 50-year-old white man, because there's this narrative that it's really hard to be a white man right now. And I come into that a lot when I talk to organizations or when I do diversity work. which is sometimes difficult to hear, but I need to understand that that's that person's perspective, kind of figure out why, and then help them see other perspectives. And one of the ways that I do that is I went through a really great DEI training, and it talked about 27 different characteristics to look at for diversity. So rather than just going in and talking about, race and gender, it talks about socioeconomic status. Are you single or are you married? Do you have children? Are you a married person with children or a non-married person with children? Digs more into disabilities. Do you have a visible disability or an invisible disability? So it gives a lot more flavor, I guess. It adds some spice to the DEI talk, so that people can connect with the different pieces and say, okay, well, that is me. So I'm protected by this as well. Because I think people view it as, if you're not a Black woman or a Latino woman, like you're left out of this DEI conversation. And that's not really the case.
Yeah. And what do you think the what's holding people back? Like what's the problem? Is it just bias or racism, or is it a fear of change? Like where's the
I
disconnect?
think it's a mix of all three. Plus, when you think about it this way, if you have 7 C-suite positions in your organization, and right now they're filled by 7 white males, and you say, we want some diversity. So if, Bob retires, we're going to replace him with, someone that has a different perspective, which, i.e. a diverse hire. Those 7 people may feel like, well, you took away from us to give to someone else, to give to another group. And I think that that's a lot of it, is people feel like they're losing out for diversity hires, without looking at it from the other end and saying, well, these diversity hires have been losing out for years and years and years because they're very qualified candidates, but they've never been given the opportunity.
Yeah, so they almost feel like some people are being fast tracked, right?
Yeah.
If you will, just to fill in some spots, right? And I will say that I also, as you talk about 7 white males on the board, they all probably have really good hair too,
Yeah.
right? And
John
are over,
Stamos level hair. Yeah.
yeah, and are over, and that's why I'm not on many boards, right? So yeah, it's and are probably over 6 feet tall too. So there's just some biasness that, or unconscious bias that we don't even notice,
Right.
right? And but really, I think when people look at the equation of what is the goal, and the goal is to run a successful business and make an inclusive environment, then you need views, you need people that
Right.
have alternative perspectives. So
Right.
that sounds like fun, exciting work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
It's
where
a
do
lot of
you
fun.
yeah, yeah, and truthfully super easy to get pretty passionate about, and getting your rear end out of bed to make it happen.
Yeah.
And what have you think that, like, has there been, if you were to put a change on a timeline, right, has much change been made over the last 5-10 years?
So I think it depends on who you're talking to and how they look at it. So from my perspective, and again, I'm viewing it as a Black woman, no, there hasn't been a lot of change.
Right.
It feels sometimes that things are actually going backwards. But I'm sure that for other people, they feel like, oh my gosh, there's tons of change and it's crazy, what's going on? But again, it's that perspective and that view. And I think that I may have a view also because of the type of work that I do, and always knowing that there are organizations that need this help and need that change. So sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming. It's funny, I work with a really great nonprofit, Athleta, and they help student athletes of color train, get leadership experience, get mentorship so that they're ready for internships.
Oh, cool.
And so I've been working with companies to try to get them kind of internship ready. And I get like kind of mama bear, and I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't want my kids working here. So, again, it's that perspective of, for me, looking at it from my point of view, saying, would my child be welcome here? Would my child thrive here?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I guess when you know that the change can happen and you know the results,
Hmm.
and then you stumble across any form of resistance, it just has to be frustrating, right?
It can be very frustrating. That's why I said you have to take that time out and just really kind of breathe through it and understand that the same way, you're frustrated because you don't get their perspective, they don't get mine either. So you
Mhm.
have to break down those barriers, have good conversations. And it's not even a matter of having thick skin. It's just a matter, in my mind, of giving grace to people to understand that this is a conversation that they've probably never had before.
Yeah, it's interesting, like him or hate him, but it's interesting that Trevor Noah talked about that in between one of his programs. He talks to the audience and he
Mhm.
said, like, what's the difference between the US and South Africa when it comes to racial tension? And he said, conversation.
Mhm.
So I think what happens in North America is some people are uncomfortable with some conversations, and so we just choose not to have them.
Right.
And he said in um, South Africa, when he was a young kid there, they had those conversations,
Mhm.
and it was okay for somebody to say, "Dude, that's just wrong, right? Like you can't say that. That's
And it's
and
not like that here.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and rather than be offended and pushing back, that they eventually realized and had some form of empathy towards
Mhm.
them. And if you look at, still not perfect, right? But if you look at their progression along the timeline, since Nelson Mandela was released
Right.
from prison versus now, it's night and day,
It's
right?
a huge difference. And it's funny
Yeah.
that you mentioned that. One of my very best friends is from South Africa, and she is shocked at how things are here and shocked at how far behind things are here, because she grew up during apartheid. Like, so
Mhm.
we're the same age. So she grew up during that. It wasn't until, like beginning of college that Nelson Mandela got out of prison.
Oh, now
And
you've
she's
just
like,
dated yourself, right? Yeah.
and so she's like, how in that short span of time did South Africa come so far, and the United States is still like leap years behind? And
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and it's I've had some conversations with some trans people, and it's not I'm not I'm not an expert in it, right? And I don't know the details, and I don't know, but I accept it, right? So
Mhm.
so forgive me if I use the wrong pronoun, but teach me,
Right,
right? Teach me,
right.
and then and it's okay, right? It's okay to have that conversation. So it's a weird, two-sided thing, right? Where if you say something, yeah, look, my father's passed, right? But he used to use when I was younger, he was not racist in any way, but he was older, and he would
Mhm.
use words that to describe different races that are just wrong, right? It would
Right.
send your hair in the back of your neck, and you'd have to say that's not okay anymore, right? That's just, and he's like, well, why? That's what we, and
Mhm.
so you have to be a bit fluent to move with the understanding and be sympathetic to, you know, the history and everything that happens
Right.
along the and just change. It's okay to change. Change is good.
But I think sometimes change means admitting that you're wrong. And there
Mhm.
are a lot of people that just have a big problem with that.
Yeah, it really seems to be a North American seems to really dig their heels in
Yeah.
with admitting you're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. Just learn. Right?
Yeah, people, I'm wrong all the time. It is what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
Teach me.
yeah. And so where do you see yourself, your business, you know, going in the future?
So I have an awesome business partner that I work with, and I wrote a book, and so he and I are putting together a leadership development curriculum that goes along with the book.
Oh, wonderful.
Um, and so we are getting that out there. It involves everything from you know, the inclusion piece, DEI, to just like basic leadership, to, you know, how do you do a state interview? Why is it 360 important? So all of those, you know, kind of pieces that kind of build and make a strong, healthy leader. And so we're hopefully going to have that out by the end of this year. And working towards what we like to say is our mission is to eliminate voluntary turnover that occurs due to bad leadership behavior or poor organizational design. So that's what we'd like to do. We want to honestly see companies thrive. And part of that is some of the HR for HR work that we do. I have a mastermind group for HR people, because there's like this big, huge thing whether or not DEI belongs in HR. And I firmly believe that it does. But I also firmly believe that there are a lot of HR people right now who are not actually practicing HR. HR is there to provide the best employee experience possible for all of the employees, not to, you know, make sure the company doesn't get sued, not to back the leaders. They're there for the employees. And when you truly do that, when you are truly there for the employee experience, you're not going to do anything illegal. You're not going to do anything bad to leaders. So, you know, kind of turning it on its head and getting HR back to where it should have been in the first place that's
Yeah.
a really that's a passion of mine.
Yeah, to be focused on strategy versus compliance,
Right.
right,
No
is great.
compliance
And
cops.
yeah, and the truth is, like, some of the organizations will get communications or even marketing involved, and I think that that's a powerful play too. I can see a fit for it everywhere as long as
Right.
everybody takes ownership of it to the best of their
That's the
ability. Then
thing. One person shouldn't own diversity for a company.
right,
It just doesn't make sense. It needs to be something that is in the DNA of the organization. All leaders need to own diversity.
totally, absolutely. And so if anybody wants to keep up on how that book's going, in the description of wherever you read this, you will see a methodology to connect. Um, so we'll have a link to the website so you can follow along and reach out if this is of interest and want to learn more. Some social channels and things like that. Whatever you provide me with, Tamika, then that
Okay.
I'll put on the description so that they can get a hold of you and reach out and I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. Do more of it, please.
Awesome. Thank you. I will.
All right. And is there anything else before we jump off here that you'd want to share, or is that fun?
No, you know what? I actually want to thank you as the you know, 50-something-year-old white man doing the diversity work. It means a lot. And I know that there are some people that may think that it's not your place, but it is your place. And I thank you. And I love what you're doing.
All right. Well, we will talk soon because I have some plans for you with some other things. But thanks for jumping on and best of luck.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.